My name is Madison Blake, or at least, that's the name I started with. The name my parents gave me, the name my brother, Leo, so easily overshadowed for the first 2 decades of my life. They thought I was the quiet one, the bookish daughter, the path of least resistance. They probably figured my dreams were as malleable as soft clay, easily reshaped or, better yet, discarded to make room for Leo's ever-changing, ever-grandiose ambitions. They certainly believed my inheritance, painstakingly saved by grandparents who saw a flicker in me that my parents seemed blind to, was just a convenient little fund for Leo's latest brilliant idea. They never, not in a million years, imagined that the name Madison Blake would one day be the signature on the acquisition papers for his failing company, and the name at the top of the letterhead of what became his new employer. What would you do if your own family, the people who were supposed to be your staunchest supporters, effectively stole your future and handed it, gift-wrapped, to someone else, simply because he was the favored son? Let me know in the comments below where you're tuning in from today. And if you've ever felt like you were fighting an uphill battle in deep mud, while someone else seemed to glide effortlessly on a paved road, courtesy of others, then please hit that like button and definitely subscribe. You're among people here who understand that sometimes the greatest victories are the ones you have to carve out for yourself, against all odds, and often against those closest to you. My childhood wasn't overtly abusive, not in the ways that leave visible scars. It was a quieter kind of erosion, a constant, subtle undermining of my worth while my brother, Leo, was bathed in a golden spotlight. Leo was 2 years older, blessed with an easy charm that seemed to make people forget his equally easy irresponsibility. I was the studious one, the responsible one, the one who remembered birthdays and got her homework done without being asked. My achievements were met with a perfunctory, "That's nice, Madison," before the conversation inevitably swerved back to Leo's latest escapade or his supposed athletic prowess, which, frankly, was mostly just enthusiasm unbacked by actual skill. I remember one year, I won the regional science fair. I'd spent months on my project, a detailed study of local water pollution. I got a small trophy and a $50 gift certificate. My parents said, "Good job, honey," and then Mother immediately launched into a story about how Leo had managed to talk his way out of a detention he thoroughly deserved. That evening, Leo got a new video game console, just because. He hadn't achieved anything noteworthy that week, or even that month. It was simply Tuesday, and Leo existing was apparently cause for celebration and material reward. My grandparents on my mother's side, Nana Clara and Grandpa Joe, were different. They lived a few states away, but their visits were oases of recognition in my childhood desert. Nana Clara, a retired librarian, saw my love for books and learning not as a quaint peculiarity but as a strength. Grandpa Joe, a carpenter with calloused hands and a twinkle in his eye, would listen patiently to my ideas, even the far-fetched ones, and say, "Well now, Maddie girl, that's got some thinkin' behind it." They were the ones who started a savings account for me, adding to it religiously on every birthday and holiday. "For your future, Madison," Nana Clara had said, her voice firm but kind. "For whatever big dreams you decide to chase." They saw potential. My parents saw a quiet, low-maintenance daughter who wouldn't cause much trouble or require much investment, emotional or otherwise. Leo, on the other hand, was a bottomless pit of needs and wants, all of which my parents seemed ecstatic to fulfill. New sporting equipment he'd use twice, expensive gadgets he'd break or lose, tuition for courses he'd inevitably drop. Their justification was always the same. Leo just needs a little extra support to find his way, or, he's got so much potential, we need to nurture it. My potential, apparently, was self-nurturing, like a hardy weed. The real fracture, the event that shifted my world from merely unbalanced to catastrophically unjust, occurred shortly after I turned 18. Nana Clara and Grandpa Joe passed away within 6 months of each other. It was a devastating blow. They were my anchors, my silent cheerleaders. Their lawyer contacted us about the will. They had left their modest house to my mother, and their savings, a surprisingly substantial sum they'd carefully built over decades, were split. A portion went to my parents, and an equal, specifically earmarked portion was left to me, to be used for her education or to establish herself in a career of her choosing. The will stated, clear as day, I remember feeling a bittersweet surge of gratitude and determination. This was it, my chance to pursue advanced studies in environmental engineering, a field I was passionate about, inspired in part by that childhood science fair project. I had it all planned out, a specific university program, a budget for tuition, living expenses, even a small fund for initial research. For the first time, I felt a clear path forward, a path paved by the love and foresight of my grandparents. That illusion of control, of a future I could direct, lasted precisely 1 week. My parents and Leo called a family meeting. That phrase alone should have been a red flag. Family meetings usually meant something was being demanded of me for Leo's benefit. We sat in the living room, the air thick with a false solemnity. My father cleared his throat. "Madison," he began, his voice oozing a practiced sincerity that always set my teeth on edge. "Your mother and I, and Leo, have been talking about Leo's future." My stomach tightened. Here we go. Leo, looking uncharacteristically serious, though the effect was somewhat spoiled by his inability to sit still, then unveiled his latest genius idea. He wanted to start a tech company. Not just any tech company, mind you, but one that was going to revolutionize. Well, he was a bit vague on the specifics. Something about an app, social media integration, influencers, and a lot of buzzwords he'd clearly picked up from a podcast. "It's a sure thing, Dad. Mom, Madison," he proclaimed, eyes shining with that familiar, unearned confidence. "I just need a bit of startup capital. A significant bit, actually." Then, my mother turned to me, her expression a careful blend of maternal concern and gentle persuasion. "Madison, dear," she said, her voice soft. "Your inheritance from Nana and Grandpa, it's a wonderful sum, and Leo's idea, well, it's very promising. We were thinking, if you were to invest in his company, it would benefit the whole family. You'd get it back, of course, with profits." Invest, that was the word they used. It felt like a shard of ice piercing my chest. My meticulously planned future, my grandparents' specific wishes were being casually dismissed, brushed aside for Leo's half-baked fantasy. But my university program, I stammered, the words feeling small and insignificant in the face of their united front. Grandpa and Nana wanted me to use it for my education. My father waved a dismissive hand. "Education is important, Madison, of course, but opportunities like Leo's don't come along every day. This could set our whole family up for life. You're smart, you're resourceful, you can get scholarships, loans, you'll find another way to fund your studies. Leo needs this now." "It's not fair," I whispered, the fight already draining out of me. The weight of their combined expectation was crushing. Leo chimed in, suddenly earnest. "Come on, Madison, don't be like that. This is big. For all of us. You wouldn't want to be the one to hold me back, would you? Think of it as a loan. I'll pay you back double, triple." He had no concept of money, of risk, of the sheer magnitude of what they were asking. My mother played the final card, the guilt card, honed to a razor's edge through years of practice. "Madison, we're a family, we support each other, your brother has a dream. Don't you want to see him succeed? After all we've done for you?" What had they done for me? Provided food and shelter, yes, the basic requirements. But support for my dreams, encouragement, understanding? Those were commodities reserved exclusively for Leo. I looked at their expectant faces, my father's feigned reasonableness, my mother's pleading eyes, Leo's impatient excitement. I felt utterly alone, cornered. The injustice of it was a physical ache, a burning in my throat. My grandparents' legacy, their belief in me, was about to be funneled into Leo's latest whim. The investment happened quickly. There were no contracts, no promissory notes, just a transfer from my account to a new business account Leo had already set up, an account my father was also a signatory on. For oversight, he'd said. The money was gone, and with it, my university plans, my carefully constructed future. I felt hollowed out, a profound sense of betrayal settling deep in my bones. I cried for days, not just for the lost money but for the shattering of any remaining illusion that I mattered to them as much as Leo did. My grief for my grandparents was compounded by this fresh wound. They had tried to give me a leg up, and my own parents had sawed it off at the knee to hand to my brother. When I tried to express my hurt, my despair, they dismissed it. "Oh, Madison, don't be so dramatic," my mother said, a hint of impatience in her voice. "It's just money, you'll make more." Leo's company, Leo Lucians Global, he'd finally settled on a name that sounded sufficiently self-important, is going to be huge. We're all going to benefit. You should be excited for him. My father was more pragmatic, or so he thought. "Look, Madison, Leo has the charisma, the vision. These tech things are all about momentum. He needs to strike while the iron is hot. You're the practical one, you understand these things. You can defer university for a year or two, work, save up. It'll build character." Leo, already absorbed in designing logos and ordering expensive office furniture with my money, just grinned and said, "Don't worry, sis, when I'm rich, I'll buy you a university." He genuinely seemed to believe he was doing me a favor, that his inevitable success would somehow compensate for the theft of my inheritance. He even had the gall to say, with a dismissive wave of his hand, "Besides, what were you really going to do with it? Some boring science stuff? This is way more exciting." That boring science stuff was my passion, my future, casually swatted away like an annoying fly. The despair was a thick, suffocating blanket for weeks. I walked around in a daze. The world seemed muted, gray. My grandparents' faces haunted my dreams, their kind eyes filled with a disappointment that was almost unbearable. How could I have let this happen? But then, what choice did I really have, short of causing an irreparable family schism, which, at 18, felt like too terrifying a prospect? They had backed me into a corner using love and obligation as their weapons. But slowly, painstakingly, something else began to stir beneath the grief and betrayal, a tiny, cold spark of anger, an anger that grew into a quiet, resolute fury. They thought I was a pushover. They thought my dreams were disposable. They thought I would just quietly accept my fate as the family martyr, the eternal supporter of the golden boy. They were wrong. One evening, staring at my reflection in the cracked mirror of the tiny room I was now renting, having had to move out of the family home much sooner than planned due to the sudden lack of funds for anything, let alone my presence, I made a vow. It wasn't dramatic, no fist shaking at the heavens. It was a cold, hard promise to myself. They will not break me. I whispered to my pale, tear-stained face. I will achieve my dreams, not despite them, but almost because of them. And one day, they will understand what they threw away. My original plan had been environmental engineering. With the university funds gone, that specific path seemed impossibly distant. But my passion for sustainability, for creating efficient, responsible solutions, remained. I started researching alternative routes. Online courses, certifications, smaller, more specialized programs that I could potentially afford if I worked tirelessly. My new dream began to crystallize. I would start my own company. Not a flashy tech startup like Leo's, built on hype and borrowed money, but something solid, something essential. A company focused on providing green technology and sustainability consulting to other businesses, helping them become more efficient, more environmentally responsible, and ultimately, crise bravenet en applies, more profitable in the long run. I would call it Viridian Dynamics. Viridian, for green, for growth. Dynamics, for change, for power. The years that followed were a blur of relentless hard work. I worked 2, sometimes 3, part-time jobs. Barista in the mornings, data entry in the afternoons, tutoring math and science in the evenings. Every spare penny went towards online courses in sustainable design, environmental policy, business management. My social life was non-existent. My apartment was a tiny, furnished shoebox with a perpetually dripping faucet and temperamental heating. Ramen noodles became a staple food group. There were countless nights I fell asleep with my face pressed against a textbook, exhausted to my core, the weight of my ambition and the bitterness of my family's betrayal a constant ache. During this time, Leo's company, Leo Lucians Global, had its grand launch. My parents threw a lavish party, funded of course by the dregs of my inheritance and probably some additional loans they'd taken out, convinced of Leo's imminent Midas touch. I saw the pictures on my mother's social media feed. Leo, beaming in a ridiculously expensive suit, my parents on either side of him, glowing with pride. There were champagne fountains and local D-list celebrities. It felt like a punch to the gut every time I saw an update. They'd call me, not to ask how I was coping, but to gush about Leo's latest supposed triumph. Madison, darling, did you hear? Leo Lucians just signed a memorandum of understanding with a tiny influencer you've never heard of. He's going to be on the cover of obscure local business monthly. I'd offer a strained, "That's great," and then make an excuse to hang up, the unfairness of it all a fresh wave of nausea. But amidst the struggle, glimmers of light appeared. Dr. Evelyn Reed, one of my online business strategy professors, noticed the quality of my work, the incisiveness of my analysis. She was a formidable woman in her late 50s, a retired chief executive officer herself, with a no-nonsense attitude and a sharp intellect. She started engaging with me more in the course forums, then suggested video calls. "Madison," she said during one such call, her gaze direct, "you have a remarkably astute mind for sustainable systems and a practical approach that's rare. What are your plans?" Hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, I told her about Viridian dynamics. She didn't laugh, she didn't dismiss it. She listened, asked probing questions, and then, to my astonishment, offered to mentor me. "The world needs more businesses built on substance, not just flash," she stated. "And frankly, it needs more tenacious young women like you leading them." Dr. Reed became an invaluable guide, offering advice, connections, and a belief in me that was like water in a desert. My other rock was Sarah, my best friend since high school. Sarah was a whirlwind of creative energy, a freelance graphic designer with a heart of gold. When I was at my lowest, she was there with a pint of cheap ice cream, a terrible movie, and an endless capacity to listen to my rants about my family. She was the one who helped me design my first rudimentary logo for Viridian Dynamics on her battered laptop. "They're idiots, Maddie," she'd say fiercely. "Leo's company sounds like a bad 80s sci-fi movie. Viridian Dynamics? That sounds like something real, something that matters. You'll show them." "We'll show them." Her unwavering faith was a lifeline. Slowly, painstakingly, Viridian Dynamics began to take shape. I registered the business. I built a simple website myself, using skills I'd picked up from free tutorials. I started offering freelance consulting services, initially for tiny local businesses, a bakery wanting to reduce energy costs, a small office looking to implement a recycling program. My rates were ridiculously low, but I was building experience, testimonials, a portfolio. Each small success was a hard-won victory, a tiny chip against the mountain of injustice I felt. Meanwhile, Leo Lucians Global, after its flashy launch, seemed to be all style and no substance. I'd hear snippets from my parents, always positive of course, but reading between the lines I could sense trouble. "Leo's just hired a new chief visionary officer." My mother would chirp, conveniently omitting that they'd lost their lead developer. "They're pivoting to a new disruptive paradigm." Which I suspected meant their old paradigm had failed to disrupt anything but their cash flow. Leo himself was a master of spin, always full of grand pronouncements about imminent breakthroughs that never quite materialized. He burned through my inheritance at an alarming rate, a fact my parents either ignored or chose not to see. He leased a ridiculously opulent office space, hired too many people for ill-defined roles, and seemed to spend more time networking at trendy parties than actually building a viable product. My first significant milestone with Viridian Dynamics came about 2 years into my struggle. I landed a contract with a mid-sized manufacturing company to overhaul their waste management and energy consumption systems. It was a complex project, demanding all my knowledge and ingenuity. I worked 16-hour days for months, poring over schematics, analyzing data, liaising with their initially skeptical department heads. But the results were undeniable. I managed to help them reduce their operational waste by 40% and their energy costs by nearly 30% within the first year. They were thrilled. They gave me a glowing testimonial and, more importantly, referred me to other businesses. Word began to spread. Viridian Dynamics, the small, agile consultancy that delivered real, measurable results in sustainability. I started getting more clients, bigger projects. I was finally able to move out of my shoebox apartment into a slightly larger, though still modest, one-bedroom. I hired my first employee, a bright young environmental science graduate named Ben, who shared my passion. When I told my parents about landing that first big contract, my mother's response was, "Oh, that's interesting, dear. Did you hear Leo is thinking of expanding Leo Lucians to the international market? He met someone at a conference who knows someone in Liechtenstein." The dismissal, the casual ignorance of my hard-won success, still stung, but it was a dull ache now, overlaid with a grim satisfaction. They had no idea what I was building, brick by painstaking brick, fueled by their own disregard. Leo, on the rare occasions we spoke, was condescending. "Still messing around with that recycling stuff, Maddie?" he asked once, during a strained family holiday dinner. "You should come work for me. I could use someone to organize the office plants or something. We're about to launch version 2 of our app. It's going to be a game changer." I just smiled faintly and said, "Thanks, Leo, but I'm quite busy with Viridian." The sheer arrogance, the complete lack of awareness of how much of my future he had consumed to fund his game changer was breathtaking. A few more years passed. Viridian Dynamics grew steadily. We weren't a flashy unicorn startup, but we were respected, profitable, and making a genuine difference. We won a prestigious industry award for innovation in corporate sustainability. I was invited to speak at conferences. I even managed to buy a small office space, no longer running the company from my kitchen table. My team expanded to 10 dedicated professionals. Dr. Reed remained a crucial mentor, her advice guiding me through the complexities of scaling a business. Sarah, now a successful designer herself, had become my go-to for all Viridian's branding, her creativity giving us a polished professional image that belied our relatively humble beginnings. My relationship with my parents and Leo remained superficial. They saw my company's name mentioned in a local business journal once. My father called, sounding surprised. "Madison, this Viridian company, that's yours? It said you were the chief executive officer. I thought it was just a little hobby." "Yes, Dad," I replied, my voice even. "It's my company. It's doing quite well." "Oh, well, good for you," he said, before quickly changing the subject to Leo's latest financial tightrope act, framed, of course, as a bold strategic maneuver. "Leo is just restructuring for aggressive growth," he'd explained. I knew restructuring for aggressive growth was often corporate, speak for desperately trying to stay afloat. The foreshadowing of the climax began subtly. Whispers in the industry about Leolution's Global being in trouble. They'd overspent, underdelivered. Their flagship app was buggy and outdated. Competitors had emerged with better, cheaper products. Key staff were reportedly jumping ship. Then, new environmental regulations were announced for tech companies regarding e-waste and carbon footprint reporting, precisely the kind of regulations Viridian Dynamics specialized in helping companies navigate. I remember reading the announcement and feeling a strange sense of calm, a premonition almost. The universe, it seemed, had a darkly ironic sense of humor. One afternoon, my office phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. "Good afternoon, Viridian Dynamics, Madison Blake speaking." A hesitant male voice on the other end. "Miss Blake, my name is Arthur Jenkins. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Leolution's Global." My heart gave a little jolt. I kept my voice perfectly neutral. "Mr. Jenkins, how can I help you?" "Well," he began, then paused. "It's a rather delicate matter. Leolution's is facing some significant challenges, particularly with the new sustainability compliance mandates. And, to be frank, our internal systems are not optimal for the current market. We've been looking for a firm that specializes in your area of expertise. Your company, Viridian Dynamics, has come very highly recommended." Internally, I was a whirlwind of emotions, vindication, a touch of grim amusement, and a steely resolve. Externally, I was the picture of professionalism. "I see, Mr. Jenkins. Viridian Dynamics does have extensive experience in those areas. Perhaps you could send over a preliminary brief, and we can schedule a meeting to discuss your needs in more detail." "Excellent, excellent," he said, sounding relieved. "We'd like to meet as soon as possible. Our board is eager for solutions." The meeting was set for the following Tuesday at their offices. Their opulent, ridiculously expensive offices that my inheritance had paid for. The irony was almost too rich. I spent the next few days preparing, not just the business proposal, but myself. This wasn't just another client meeting. This was a reckoning, years in the making. Sarah sensed something was up. "You've got that glint in your eye, Maddie," she said. "The one you get when you're about to conquer a small nation. Who is it?" I just smiled. "Let's just say it's a company with a very personal connection." The day of the meeting arrived. I chose my outfit carefully. A sharply tailored navy suit, a crisp white blouse, understated, powerful. My Viridian Dynamics team, Ben, now my head of operations, and Lena, our lead strategist, were with me. They knew Leo Lucians was a potential client, but they didn't know the full backstory. I preferred to keep that private. We arrived at the Leo Lucians global headquarters. The reception area was all gleaming chrome and oversized abstract art, trying desperately to scream innovation, but mostly just whispering poor financial decisions. We were ushered into a large, intimidatingly sterile boardroom. Arthur Jenkins, a nervous-looking man with worry lines etched deep into his forehead, greeted us. And then, Leo walked in. He hadn't changed much physically, still that boyish charm, though it was strained now, overlaid with a palpable anxiety. He was followed by my father. Acting as a board advisor, no doubt, still trying to steer Leo's sinking ship. They hadn't been told who the chief executive officer of Viridian Dynamics was. Jenkins had likely just mentioned the company name. Leo strode forward, hand outstretched, a practiced corporate smile plastered on his face. Mr. Jenkins tells me you're the folks from Viridian. We're very keen to hear what you... His voice trailed off. His eyes met mine. The smile froze, then crumbled, replaced by an expression of utter, slack-jawed disbelief. His hand dropped to his side. My father, who had been looking at some papers, glanced up to see why Leo had stopped talking. His gaze fell on me. His face went pale, then a strange mottled red. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. A very well-dressed, professionally composed ghost. Silence descended on the boardroom, thick and suffocating. My team, Ben and Lena, looked confused by the sudden, dramatic tension. I, however, felt a profound, almost serene calm settle over me. I'd rehearsed this moment in my mind 1,000 times, in 1,000 different ways, but the reality was far more satisfyingly understated. I offered a small, polite smile. Leo, Dad, it's been a while. My voice was even, betraying none of the turmoil that had once consumed me. I'm Madison Blake, Chief Executive Officer of Viridian Dynamics. Shall we begin? Leo just stared, speechless. My father opened and closed his mouth a few times, like a fish out of water. Arthur Jenkins looked back and forth between us, a dawning horror on his face as he clearly began to piece together some unspoken family drama. I took control. Mr. Jenkins, perhaps you could start by outlining Leo Lucian's current challenges as you see them. I addressed him, but my gaze flickered to Leo, to my father, letting them see the woman I had become, the woman they had underestimated, dismissed, and unknowingly forged in the fires of their injustice. The presentation that followed was, for me, an out-of-body experience. Ben and Lena, professionals to the core, launched into our standard pitch, detailing Viridian's services, our success stories, our unique methodologies for integrating sustainability and efficiency. I interjected with strategic points, my voice calm and authoritative. All the while, I could feel Leo's stunned gaze on me, my father's increasingly uncomfortable fidgeting. When it came to the Q&A, Leo finally found his voice, though it was weak, uncertain. Madison, I had no idea. Evidently, I replied, my tone neutral. Viridian Dynamics has been operating for several years now. We've built a strong reputation in the sector. I paused, then added. With a slight edge that only they would truly understand, we were built from the ground up, with very specific ethics regarding investment and resource allocation. We believe in sustainable growth, earned success, not quick fixes funded by any means necessary. My father flinched as if struck. Leo looked down at the polished mahogany table, his usual bravado completely gone. The truth of their situation, as outlined by Jenkins and confirmed by their desperate questions, was dire. Leo Lucians was hemorrhaging money, their technology was outdated. They were on the verge of defaulting on loans. The new environmental regulations were the final nail in their coffin unless they could implement drastic changes immediately, changes they had neither the expertise nor the capital to enact themselves. After my team had laid out our initial assessment and a proposed scope of work, which was extensive and, by necessity, expensive, I delivered my terms. Viridian Dynamics can certainly assist Leo Lucians, I said, my voice cool and professional. We can offer a comprehensive restructuring and compliance package. However, given the significant financial instability and operational disarray within Leo Lucians, a standard service contract presents a high risk for my company. I let that sink in, the silence stretched. Therefore, I continued, Viridian Dynamics is prepared to make an alternative offer, an acquisition. Leo's head snapped up, my father gasped. Arthur Jenkins looked intrigued, if somewhat terrified. We would acquire the remaining assets of Leo Lucians Global. I clarified, integrate its viable components into Viridian's existing structure, and manage the necessary operational overhaul and compliance implementation. This would, of course, mean a change in leadership and a significant restructuring of personnel. I looked directly at Leo. Your role, should you choose to remain during a transition period, would be considerably different. The implication was clear. He would no longer be the boss. He would, if anything, be working for me. The company he had built with my stolen future would be absorbed by the company I had built from its ashes. My father finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Madison, surely there's another way. A loan? A partnership? I met his gaze, my own unwavering. Dad, Leo Lucians is past the point of a simple loan, and a partnership requires a foundation of trust and mutual respect that, frankly, doesn't exist here. This isn't personal, it's business. Viridian Dynamics doesn't make sentimental decisions, we make sound financial ones. The unspoken, unlike you, hung heavy in the air. The shock in that room was a palpable force. Leo looked utterly defeated, the golden boy image shattered into a million pieces. My father seemed to age 10 years before my eyes. They knew they had no other viable options. They were trapped. Their survival now depended entirely on the daughter, the sister they had so carelessly wronged. The immediate aftermath of that meeting was a blur of negotiations, legal paperwork, and due diligence, all handled with ruthless efficiency by my team and our lawyers. The acquisition of Leo Lucians Global by Viridian Dynamics was announced to the business press a few weeks later. It was framed as a strategic move by Viridian to expand its portfolio and talent pool, with a brief mention of salvaging a struggling tech firm. Most of the world saw it as a smart, albeit minor, business transaction. Only a handful of people knew the true, delicious irony of the situation. Dr. Reed called me the day the news broke. Madison, she said, her voice laced with unconcealed pride. I read about the acquisition, Leo Lucians Global, wasn't that? Yes, Dr. Reed, I confirmed, it was. She chuckled, a dry, knowing sound. Well, my dear, that's what I call a return on an investment they never knew they made in you. Poetic justice, exquisitely served. I'm incredibly proud of what you've built. Her words meant more to me than any public accolade. Sarah, of course, was ecstatic. She showed up at my office with a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. To Madison Blake. She toasted, her eyes shining. The queen of her own empire and now apparently her brother's boss. Oh, if only Nana Clara and Grandpa Joe could see this. We laughed, a genuine, joyous laugh that felt like a release of years of pent-up frustration. My parents and Leo were subdued. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a stunned, awkward silence. Leo, as part of the acquisition agreement, was offered a temporary mid-level managerial role during the transition, overseeing the dismantling of his own departments. It was a humbling, public fall from grace. He mostly kept to himself, his interactions with me brief and stilted. I didn't rub it in. I didn't need to. The reality of the situation was indictment enough. I treated him with professional courtesy, the same I would extend to any employee, which in itself was probably a novel experience for him. My father tried to talk to me once, a few days after the deal was finalized. He approached me hesitantly after a transition meeting. Madison, he began, his voice low. We didn't realize. Didn't realize what, Dad? I asked, my tone calm but unyielding. That I was capable, that my dreams mattered, that taking my inheritance was wrong? He flinched. We always knew you were smart, Madison, Leo needed so much. Leo always needed so much because you both enabled him to believe the world owed him everything, while I was expected to require nothing, I stated, not unkindly but firmly. My success with Viridian wasn't because of anything you did, it was despite it. The terms of any future relationship we have, Dad, will be on a foundation of respect. The kind of respect you failed to show me for 2 decades." He had no reply to that, just a defeated nod. My mother attempted a tearful phone call, full of vague apologies and lamentations about how things just got out of hand. I listened patiently, then gently explained that while I appreciated the sentiment, true reconciliation would take time and a genuine understanding on their part of the depth of the hurt they had caused. The old dynamics of guilt and obligation were no longer in play. I held the cards now, and I wasn't afraid to set boundaries. The months that followed were intense. Integrating Leo Lucian's few viable assets and capable staff, many of whom were relieved to be under new, competent management, into Viridian Dynamics was a challenge, but my team was exceptional. We streamlined operations, implemented our sustainable practices, and turned what was a sinking ship into a moderately functional, if significantly smaller, division of Viridian. Leo lasted 6 months. The humiliation of working for his younger sister, in a diminished capacity, within the ruins of his own failed ambition, was clearly too much for his ego. He resigned, quietly. I heard later he'd moved to another city, trying to start something new, something small, on his own this time. Perhaps the experience had finally taught him something about the value of earning your own way. Or perhaps not. Frankly, I found I didn't care much either way. My focus was on Viridian, on my team, on the future we were building. Years have passed since then. Viridian Dynamics has continued to thrive. We're now a recognized international leader in corporate sustainability solutions, with offices in several countries. I've found a measure of peace and personal happiness I never thought possible during those dark, early years. I'm in a loving, supportive relationship with a man who celebrates my strength and ambition, who sees me for who I am, not who he wants me to be. We have a home filled with light and laughter, and my work continues to be challenging and deeply fulfilling. My relationship with my parents has evolved into something cautiously polite. They have, over time, shown glimmers of genuine remorse, a dawning understanding of their past actions. We see each other on major holidays. The conversations are often superficial, but the old undercurrents of favoritism and dismissal are gone, replaced by a wary respect on their part. They know I am not the quiet, pliable girl they once took for granted. They know my success is entirely my own. They sometimes mention Leo vaguely. He's apparently finding himself. I wish him no ill, but his life is no longer my concern. My validation doesn't come from their approval anymore, it comes from within, from the knowledge of what I've overcome and what I've built. Looking back, the theft of my inheritance was a pivotal moment. It was an act of profound betrayal, yes, but it was also the catalyst that forced me onto a path of fierce independence and self-reliance. They thought they were taking my future, but in reality, they were just clearing the way for me to build a much bigger, brighter one on my own terms. They inadvertently handed me the fuel for my fire. The injustice of it all forged a resilience in me I never knew I possessed. What they did was undeniably wrong, a deep family wound that took years to even begin to scar over. But the irony isn't lost on me. By trying to secure Leo's dream, they inadvertently paved the way for mine to become their reality, quite literally. They wanted Leo to be a big-shot chief executive officer. Instead, I became one and in the process briefly became his. The greatest lesson I learned through all of this is that your worth is not determined by how others value you, especially when those others are blinded by their own biases or favoritism. Your worth is inherent. It's in your resilience, your determination, your ability to get up one more time than you're knocked down. Being underestimated, I discovered, can be a tremendous advantage. It allows you to work in the shadows, to build your strength quietly, to grow without the crushing weight of unfair expectations or the distraction of unearned praise. And then, when the time is right, you can step into the light and show the world, and those who doubted you, exactly what you're made of. My grandparents wanted me to use their gift to chase my dreams. In the end, I did. Not in the way any of us imagined, but I did, and I built something that I know would have made them incredibly proud. So, if you've ever been in a situation where your dreams were dismissed, your talents overlooked, or your contributions undervalued, especially by those who should have been your biggest champions, I truly want you to share your story in the comments below. How did you navigate that? How did you find your strength and your path to prove them, and more importantly, yourself, wrong? Your experiences matter, and sharing them can empower others. And please, don't forget to like this video if my journey resonated with you, and hit that subscribe button for more stories about overcoming adversity, fighting for your worth, and achieving triumph against the odds. We all have a story of resilience within us. Remember this: your value is intrinsic. Don't ever let anyone, not even your own family, diminish it or define it for you. Build your own empire, whatever that looks like in your life. Whether it's a company, a career, a skill, a family, or simply a life lived with integrity and purpose. And trust me when I say this, the view from the top, especially when you've paved your own way there, stone by hard-won stone, is absolutely, breathtakingly, incredible.